Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching The World Report. Let's first take a look at the headlines. The FBI has named a 42-year-old war veteran as the attacker who killed at least 15 people in New Orleans. Shamsuddin Jabbour is not thought to have worked alone. An ISIS flag was attached to the truck that was used in the attack. Officers are investigating a Cybertruck explosion outside of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. The rented vehicle was filled with fuel and firework explosives, killing the driver and injuring others. Israel has reportedly bombed a so-called humanitarian zone in southern Gaza. Meanwhile, Palestinian authorities have banned Al Jazeera from operating in the West Bank. A Russian drone strike has hit central Kyiv, killing at least 2 people. This comes as Zelensky hails one of Moscow's biggest defeats as Gazprom gas is halted from entering Europe through Ukraine. On New Year's Day, Russia launched a drone strike on Kyiv, killing 2 and injuring 6, while damaging buildings in 2 districts, including a residential building. President Zelensky confirmed Russia's actions, emphasizing that even on New Year's Eve, Russia's focus was solely on harming Ukraine. In a related development, Russian gas exports through Soviet-era pipeline running across Ukraine were halted on New Year's Day. This marks the end of Moscow's decades-long dominance over Europe's energy markets. Gazprom, Russia's state-owned company, confirmed the stoppage at 5 GMT after Ukraine refused to renew the gas transit agreement. While this was widely anticipated, experts suggest that the suspension will not affect European Union gas prices, in contrast to the sharp price hikes experienced in 2022 when Russia's reduced gas supply triggered an energy crisis. First, we're going to be joined by our correspondent, Aditya Wadwan. Aditya, I'd like to bring back to the strikes themselves that we saw over the New Year's period. We know 2 people have died, 6 people have been injured. What else do you know?
Well, Josh, absolutely. As you rightly pointed out, Russia retaliated to the Ukrainian drone strikes that took place in the Russian city of Kazan. Russia launched a series of missiles and drones, and the first explosion was heard at around 3 a.m. in Kyiv, and the second explosion was heard around 8 a.m. in the morning. So this is. This seems to be an unending war. This war has been going on for quite some time now. Since 2022, this Russia-Ukraine war started, and there has been no stopping since then. On the other side, if you see, let's put this into perspective. Russian president, on one hand, the Russian president Vladimir Putin says that he is ready to make compromises on the Ukraine war on the position of strength and not on weakness. But on the other hand, Russia is retaliating, is attacking Ukrainian cities again and again, and so this needs to be seen as to how this entire scenario is, going forward. It is not sure as of now that after Donald Trump takes office as the US president on 20th January, whether this war will stop or not. So this needs to be seen, George. As you mentioned, resulting of this, what has happened is that the Ukraine has stopped the flow, the gas supply to the European. This will majorly impact Russia's position as a monopoly energy supplier to the Europe. So this needs to be seen. Yes, George, back to you in the studios.
Thank you, Aditya. I'm going to bring it back to the gas flow, and I'm going to go to Gilbert Doctorow, a Russian affairs expert who joins us now. Gilbert Doctorow, in terms of the impact that this could have on Russia, we've seen, of course, that Zelensky has hailed it as a defeat for Moscow, but what will the impact be felt in Russia, and what could be the financial impacts?
Well, the impact on Russia is likely to be negligible. To put a dollar sign next to this action, Russia has been supplying $6.5 billion per year in gas via the Ukrainian pipelines. That will now be zero. At the same time, Ukraine will lose its transit fees, which have been $1 billion per year. So both sides will be taking a cut. But I think the Ukrainian economy is vastly weaker than the Russian economy. The Russian economy, just to give you an example, Russia has imposed on itself a deprivation of export sales for its military equipment, for its all of its tanks and artillery and whatever else that is purchased by India, by many countries around the world. And because this equipment is needed for continuing the military action in Ukraine. Russia has
Sorry, Gilbert, to interrupt. I want to bring it back, though, to the impact that has been there on Russian businesses. We've seen, of course, that many Western companies have taken business away from Russia, even though some are still operating on a smaller scale. But there must be some impact on this. It can't be nothing. We're looking at many businesses that have stopped trading with Russia. Experts have said that Russia in their current state can't carry out a continued war for more than maybe 1 or 2 years at this rate. So there must be some impact. It can't be negligible.
Those same people who are saying what you just quoted expected that Russia would run out of artillery shells after a few months following the entry into the war in February. So those same people are not to be taken as experts. They are propagandists. As regards money, as I was saying, Russia has cut off $35 billion in its own military exports per year. So what difference will a $6.5 billion loss? And part of that is not a loss, because Russia will replace these pipeline sales by more LNG sales. The European Union imported more LNG from Russia in 2024 than in 2023. There are a lot of complications to this story, and a simple approach that Russia is a loser is just propaganda from Kyiv.
Ambassador Suresh Goel, I'm going to come to you next because I really want to look at the impact that this is going to have on the rest of Europe. We saw when the war started, or when the war at least escalated past the 2014 Crimea annexation. We saw gas prices across the continent of Europe rise dramatically, and that is still being felt across Europe. But in terms of the financial impact, the EU are saying it's not going to have that big of an issue. So can you provide some more context potentially on that for us?
My own sense is that if you look at the overall performance of Russian economy ever since the war with Ukraine began, and also from the context of financial instruments to put pressure on any country, most often this pressure or the impact of any kind of financial pressures or the trade sanctions has the impact only as far as the country subject to these pressures allows it to take place. Let me explain what I mean. Iran, I'm just giving a context here really. The USA had thought that Iran, after all the trade sanctions, all the economic sanctions, on the gas, on the oil trade, etc., would be subjugated after some time, and would actually submit to the USA demands on nuclear program. It didn't happen. They continued with the nuclear enrichment, uranium enrichment. Russia, with the beginning of the Ukraine war, there had been enormous pressure. And now there is no doubt that the Russian economy has been impacted, and it has been analyzed in the various articles, public domain, but not to the extent that the world thought it would happen. They have been able to continue with the war effort despite all the pressure, and there are buyers of oil as unanticipated before. So my own sense would be that there would be an impact, but who will suffer from this? Moldova has had to cut down on their own energy metrics, and they are suffering from heat, a lack of heat. Therefore, the countries which could be impacted by gas supply stoppage at this time, at this severe winter, would of course be also the countries who were actually buying gas earlier. Therefore, while the impact on Russia could be temporary, for a few months till they find alternative buyers, impact on the European economies and people would be far more, and that is my sense. Josh.
Thank you very much, and we will continue to bring you the latest updates from across the Russia-Ukraine war and any further developments that we have across the EU with the continuation of the fuel crisis. We now move to President Biden, who linked the New Year's Day Bourbon Street attack, which killed 15 and injured 35, to ISIS. He urged caution as the investigation continues. The suspect, a 42-year-old US Army veteran named Shamsuddin Jabbar, rammed a truck into a crowd and fired at officers. Jabbar rented the vehicle through Turo, which was also used in a recent Vegas explosion. Here is the full report.
I say, our hearts are with the people of New Orleans after the despicable attack that occurred in the early morning hours. To all the families of those who are killed, to all those who are injured, to all the people of New Orleans who are grieving today, I want you to know, I grieve with you. Our nation grieves with you.
President Biden alleged the New Year's Day attack on Bourbon Street, which killed 15 and injured 35, was ISIS-inspired. He urged law enforcement to avoid rushing to conclusions as the investigation continues.
The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill. The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack.
The suspect, identified as 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar, a U.S. Army veteran from Texas, rammed his truck into a crowd on Bourbon Street at 3:15 a.m. CST, then opened fire on law enforcement officers. Jabbar rented the vehicle through Turo, a platform that allows car owners to rent their cars. Turo confirmed that their platform was used for this rental and also in a recent vehicle explosion in Las Vegas. The FBI has launched searches in Houston and New Orleans, looking for further evidence linking Jabbar to the attack.
Weapons and potential improvised explosive devices, IEDs, were located in the subject's vehicle. Other potential IEDs were also located in the French Quarter. As of now, 2 IEDs have been found and rendered safe.
The FBI is continuing its efforts to render any remaining IEDs in the area safe and determine the full scope of Jabbar's affiliations. Among the victims of the New Year's Day attack in New Orleans are a prominent football player, a young aspiring nurse, and a mother of a 4-year-old. Their families are sharing their identities ahead of the official post-mortem results. Bureau Report, NewsX.
We'll stay in North America for the latest news updates. US President-elect Donald Trump linked Wednesday's deadly New Orleans attack to illegal immigration. Trump claimed that the nation's crime rate is at a level that nobody has ever seen. He said, "When I said that the criminals coming in are far worse than the criminals we have in the country, it turned out to be true." Protesters in New York gathered holding up signs reading "Black Lives Matter" and "Justice for Robert Brooks." This comes days after a video of the black inmate's fatal beating at a correctional officer's released. Robert Brooks, a 43-year-old man who was serving a 12-year sentence, died in the early hours of December the 10th. As per the reports, he was beaten by at least 3 officers at Marcy Correctional Facility. The woman who was killed when a man intentionally set fire to her has been identified as Debrina Kawam. Police said the 57-year-old woman resided in New Jersey. It was reported earlier that a man set fire to her while she was sleeping on a New York City subway. The New York City office of the medical examiner determined the woman died by homicide caused by thermal injuries and smoke inhalation. The Sugar Bowl, a major US college football playoff game, has been postponed for 1 day. This comes after a deadly truck ramming attack in New Orleans took place. The match drew almost tens of thousands of fans to the stadium. The game, originally scheduled for Wednesday evening, will now begin at Thursday, 3 p.m. local time. A gunman in Montenegro killed 10 people in a rampage, one of the country's worst mass shootings. Identified as Alexander Martinovic, he attacked multiple locations before dying of self-inflicted injuries. Officials promised tighter gun control as the nation mourns. Here are the latest updates.
According to police, a gunman has killed at least 10 people in a rampage on a small town in Montenegro. This is considered one of the tiny Balkan nation's worst mass killings. Official reports said the suspect had a history of illegal weapons possession. Police had earlier deployed special teams and anti-terrorism units to find the gunman around Cetinje, a valley town surrounded by rugged hills about 38 kilometers west of the Montenegrin capital Podgorica. The gunman, identified by police as a 45-year-old man, Aleksandar Martinovic, opened fire at a restaurant in Cetinje on Wednesday, where he killed 4 people. After committing the crime, he left for an unknown location, further committing crimes in 3 different locations.
Nakon ovog izvršenog krivičnog djela na prvom licu mjesta, lice se udaljilo u nepoznatom pravcu da bi na 3 za sada utvrđene lokacije izvršilo krivična djela gdje je lišilo života porodicom također Martinović, lišilo života člana svoje porodice i lišilo života 2 maloljetne djece starosti 10 i 13 godina.
He attempted to kill 4 other people, who were immediately transferred to the clinical center in Podgorica. As per the recent information, their lives are out of danger now. The country's interior minister Danilo Saranovic said that Martinovic died succumbing to his injuries on Thursday after attempting suicide following the shootings.
Nalazi i možemo da kažemo da je akcija uspješno izvršena, dakle ovo lice je bilo izolovano od strane ekspresnog djelovanja policijskih službenika i onog trenutka kada je vidjelo da se nalazi u bezizlaznoj situaciji, ovo lice je pokušalo da izvrši samoubistvo.
Montenegrin Prime Minister Milojko Spajic called the shootings a terrible tragedy and declared 3 days of national mourning in the country of 605,000 people.
Također, pooštrit ćemo kriterijume držanja oružja. Sutra ćemo imati vjerovatno Vijeće za nacionalnu bezbjednost gdje ćemo razmotriti sve modulacije, čak i potpunu zabranu oružja, i to dolazi u obzir.
In light of this tragedy, he also called for a re-evaluation of who should be entrusted with firearm possession in the country. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Let's stay in Europe for more of the latest breaking news updates. The British government has announced new laws to impose severe curbs on suspected people smugglers. This move is part itself intensified efforts to combat illegal migration and bolster border security. According to the government's statement, those suspected have been subjected to travel bans and social media blackouts. Additionally, restrictions on phone usage has been imposed to help dismantle organised immigration crime networks. Smokers in Milan have risked being fined for lighting up on city streets or crowded public areas. This comes after the country's toughest ban came into effect on Wednesday. The new regulations aim to create a healthier and cleaner environment for residents and visitors alike. Those who defy the new prohibition in the polluted northern Italian city could be fined between 40 and 240 euros. Pope Francis has ushered in the new year with a renewed appeal for the faithful to reject abortion. He called for a firm commitment to protect and respect life from conception to natural death. He celebrated New Year's Day Mass in St. Peter's Basilica on Wednesday, dedicated to Mary. In his homily, he prayed that everyone learns to care for every child born of a woman and to protect the prestigious gift of life. 7 migrants have been rescued, but at least 20 remain missing after their boats sank en route to Italy from Libya. This was confirmed by the mayor of the Italian island of Lampedusa. Among those saved is an 8-year-old Syrian boy who had been hoping to join his father in Germany. Renewable energy production rose to a record high in Portugal last year. According to the country's grid operator, natural gas consumption fell to a 20-year low in 2024 as the country installed more solar panels. In a statement, the operator said renewables granted 71% of Portugal's electricity last year. It increased from 61% the previous year. Agnes Coletti, a Holocaust survivor and the oldest living Olympic medal winner, has died at the age of 103 years old. She was hospitalised in critical condition with pneumonia on Christmas Day. She won a total of 10 Olympic medals in gymnastics, including 5 golds for Hungary at the 1952 Helsinki Games and the 1956 Melbourne Games. South Korean investigators have issued a warning that President Yoon Suk-yeol faces an arrest warrant by January the 6th over his martial law declaration. The Corruption Investigation Office is pressing charges after Yoon failed to attend questioning for the 3rd time, despite tensions surrounding the case. With both supporters and opponents camped outside his compound, Yoon remains defiant, hinting at refusing to surrender. This situation is being closely monitored as a potential legal standoff.
South Korean investigators said that they would execute an arrest warrant for President Yoon Suk-yeol over his declaration of martial law by the deadline of January 6th. The chief of Corruption Investigation Office, Oh Dong, also warned that anyone trying to block authorities from arresting Yoon could face prosecution. The Corruption Investigation Office requested the warrant after Yoon failed to report for questioning a 3rd time. But it has been unclear whether it could execute it, as the Presidential Security Service has previously refused to comply with search warrants. Supporters and opponents of Yoon camped outside the compound where he has been holed up for weeks. Yoon has remained defiant and late on Jan 1st appeared to suggest he would refuse to hand himself over. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Let's now take a look at the latest updates from the world of business. Chinese EV maker BYD reported a surge in sales. It delivered over 207,000 vehicles in December and 1.76 million in 2024. Subsidies and discounts boosted demand as BYD challenged Tesla for the top global EV seller spot. Tesla, which narrowly led in the last quarter, will release its quarterly sales figures later on Thursday. Asia's manufacturing sector ended 2024 on a subdued note as trade risks grew under President-elect Donald Trump. December's manufacturing data revealed slowing activity in South Korea and China. Meanwhile, Taiwan and Southeast Asia saw some improvements. Trump's tariff plan on imports from key partners could impact global trade and exporting nations. The Alibaba Group announced plans to sell its 78.7% stake in Sun Art Retail Group to DCP Capital for 12.298 billion Hong Kong dollars, equivalent to just over 1.5 billion US dollars. Acquired in 2020 for 3.6 billion US dollars, the hypermarket chain was part of Alibaba's strategy to integrate its digital platforms with Sun Art's extensive retail network across China. Macau's casino revenue rose 23.9% in 2024 to nearly $30 billion. It exceeded the government's forecast, but is still below 2019's pre-pandemic level of $36.56 billion. December saw a 2% year-on-year decline, the year's only drop. This highlighted the need for economic diversification in the gambling-dependent region. Malaysia's communications regulator granted licenses to WeChat and TikTok under a new law aiming to tackle cybercrime. The law requires platforms with over 8 million users to obtain a license by January the 1st. Telegram is close to completing its application, while Meta has started its licensing process for Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp. China's factory activity grew modestly in December, with the Caixin and /S&P global PMI slipping to 50.5 from 51.5, below forecasts of 51.7. Falling exports, orders and trade concerns dampened sales. Official data showing slowed manufacturing growth, with US-China trade tensions expected under Trump. Calls for stimulus to boost growth are intensifying. A US Army veteran from Texas who was employed by Deloitte is the suspect in a bloody New Year's Day attack in New Orleans that killed at least 15 people and injured 30 more. Federal investigators identified Shamsud Din Jabbar as the man who intentionally rammed a rented pickup vehicle into revelers on Bourbon Street as people were ringing in the new year. Let's have a look at this report on him.
In the early hours of New Year's Day, 15 people were killed, and at least 35 injured in a deadly attack. A man named Shamsuddin Jabbar, inspired by the Islamic State group, drove into large crowds in New Orleans, Louisiana. Here's what we know about the suspect. Shamsud, the 42-year-old assailant, is an Army veteran and a U.S. citizen from Texas. A flag associated with the Islamic State group was found in the vehicle he was driving during the attack. At present, the FBI is investigating what affiliations Jabbar may have had with the terrorist group. According to a now removed LinkedIn profile, Jabbar had worked in various roles in the U.S. Army, including human resources and IT, before he was discharged. Jabbar was deployed to Afghanistan from February 2009 to January 2010. In a YouTube video posted in 2020, Jabbar said his time in the military had taught him the meaning of great service and what it means to be responsive and take everything seriously, dotting I's and crossing T's to make sure that things go off without a hitch.
With the exception of traveling for the military, where I spent 10 years as a human resources specialist and IT specialist, where I learned the meaning of great service and what it means to be responsive and take everything seriously, dotting I's and crossing T's to make sure that things go off without a hitch. So I've taken those skills and applied them to my career as a real estate agent.
Jabbar studied at Georgia State University from 2015 to 2017, graduating with a degree in computer information systems. He was married twice. His first marriage ended in 2012 and his second lasted from 2017 to 2022. He also appears to have worked in real estate, holding a license that expired in 2021. He had a criminal record relating to traffic offenses and theft. Further investigation will reveal whether Jabbar carried out the attack alone, or there are more people involved. Bureau Report, NewsX.
That's all we have time for. We'll be back shortly with more of the latest news updates from across the world.